When we were organizing this event, it's always a mystery is how many people are going to come. Will breakfast make a difference? I guess it does. And I just want to thank you for just getting up early and being part of our world. My parents used to say this, but I'm going to pass it on to you. You are one in a million. And when you think about it, each of us are wonderfully made. Psalm 39 tells us that we're dearly loved and precious in His sight. And when you think about that, and you look around and you see all of us here, and you go to the floor of IAAPA and you wonder, how can I be so special when there are millions, in fact, billions of us? What makes me different? What makes us as an industry different? And it's funny, I used to go to football games and they'd announce the attendance, and they'd say, it's 106,000 people here today. I was like, wow, wait, 106,000 people. And then if I'm, one in a million, I'm one in all of that. And I feel very small, and sometimes insignificant. So I want to tell you my story a little bit, and tell you about what would Major Matt Mason do. I'll tell you who he is in just a second. But I grew up in Los Angeles in a small house. This is a picture of me with my dad. And this is, I guess, around the early 60s with our brand new color TV and all the cool decor that made life so wonderful back then. And, like most kids, I watched that. Lost in Space, My Favorite Martian, 3 Acres, and Beverly Hillbillies. And life was a little bit different then. But the influences of all this was, I'd say pretty uplifting and interesting as a kid. It made you think about different things in your future. And we went to church. I grew up as a Catholic and went to St. Mary's Church here every Sunday or so, and once a year we would go to Disneyland, because if you live in Southern California, you can. And it's one of those little voyages to go down the freeway so you can see the Matterhorn first. And but I was inspired by this particular land, and the rockets, and Tomorrowland, and this was, of course, the time when outer space was just being explored, and we could go to the moon. And there was Major Matt Mason, my favorite toy. He was my hero. He would go into outer space on his missions, and he had his team, and they were the communicator and the builder and the guy who, whatever I assigned him to be that day. Okay? And then, of course, he had this cool space station and all the different things that would take him on his adventures. And I lived with this little space station for hours, destroying it over and over, and throwing things at it, creating mayhem. And the first time I think I ever designed something was to try to figure out if I could make a meteor thrower. And I drew it with some crayons, and my parents even sent it over to Mattel to see what they would think about this idea of a little toy that they could make. But fast forward, after growing up and heading out to school, I ended up like a little bit like Goldilocks, thinking I was going to be an engineer, and that felt a little bit too restrained for me, and then sort of flipped to thinking I wanted to be a movie filmmaker, and that seemed a little bit too big for me, and I found a major that was just right, called design, and I got that degree at UCLA. And then, of course, there I met my beautiful wife, Brenda, my encourager, and my navigator, and my friend. And she said that I should just get over there and give her my lips and just get married. So we did that, and she opened my world to a lot of new things. And one was she had a wonderful heart, and she took me to a different kind of church. more spirit and more warmth and ability for me to get involved in church. And we did that in college. At the very end, I just met her. We started going out about 1 month before graduating. And then we decided to get married. And I thought, okay, where better to go than get a job at Disney? And no. The timing was not right. God had different plans for me. He's basically at this time, Epcot Center had just finished, and they were laying off people left and right at that time. And I, through my ways, I tried to talk to the Imagineers, and I got to have lunch with Mark Davis, one of Walt Disney's team encouragers in their circle. And I had lunch with him, and he told me, don't work for Disney. And I was like, again? He said, here's why. There's a new industry coming. A lot of us are leaving the company because of the change. Nothing bad, it's just evolution. And beginning to form little companies that are starting to service some interest in this storytelling idea and the designs for restaurants and hotels and those kinds of things. So in the day, there was not a whole lot of named entertainment industry. There was certainly amusements. You know, that's been going on for decades. But the idea of storytelling, driving, the different kinds of trades and the different kinds of skills that you have was just beginning. So I joined one of these small groups, eventually called Landmark Entertainment. That's me back there. I was, I think, employee number 14 or something. And it grew to be over 200 or 300 people. And eventually I was involved in leading their whole creative development team. But during that time, I was just a little whippersnapper. You know, I came with my little models from college, asking to be the next big designer. And again, it was like, no, I don't think so, thank you. But we do have a model building job here if you would like it. So I took that, and I built models. And the nice thing about building models is, as all the designers created all these cool things, everything had to go to the model shop. Every drawing, every little problem that was found by me and our little team. When one beam wouldn't come together with another beam, and one wall was at the wrong level, we were the ones finding this, and it was the best education I could have ever asked for, because I got to see every development process and learn all of this stuff. And of course, the company did very well. We did work for the early days of Universal Studios in Hollywood, and creating some of their early attractions, which led to us being secretly hidden in the back, assisting Jay Stein in the development of Master Plan for Islands of Adventure when that was being put forth. And internationally, we worked, you know, at the time, Japan and Asia was big, and in the Philippines, Mario, I saw you here, Enchanted Kingdom, and others. And I learned how to tell a story, and I learned the process and how to pitch big ideas, many of which did not happen, but many of which did. So when the time came, as we grew step by step, we got more clients, and one day they ran out of people. So what do? They called down to the model shop and called down to the dugout, say, who do we got? And I was up. And my first project was with Caesar's Palace. So my job was, okay, Anthony, don't mess anything up. Okay? They just want to have their staff meetings where they brainstorm all the things that we're doing. They've invited us to just listen in and hear the strategies and things. And you bring it back. So you go to these meetings every Friday and just tell us what they've been talking about. So I would take my notes, and this was during the time when Las Vegas there wasn't a whole lot there other than the old school Las Vegas. And then this is the time when Frank Sinatra and all these guys were just finishing up, and there wasn't the mirage and the volcano and all the other stuff. And so I would have my Fridays with this gentleman, Joe Lagumina. Joe was cigar smoking, drinking, And over time, I got to know Joe. He recognized my deal. He knew I didn't know a thing. But I think something in him sort of brought me under his wing, and he just sort of tolerated me enough to let me listen to their strategies. What happened is I think my only gift that I could offer at that point was I was organized, and I could make the lists. And when they would talk about, let's build bigger card-playing casinos, let's build the world's largest jackpot, let's redo the exterior, let's maybe make some shops. Of course, my contribution, my ability to shine my light was really, how do I put the list together? So I would put the shopping at the top. I would put, let's work on that exterior at the top. And I would kind of have the font fall smaller, and this was on down at the bottom with the colors and all the other pieces. So I did my job. I gave Caesar to what Caesar wants, but I think I was able to influence things in my own little microscopic way. Because ultimately it led to their first project with us to build this little rotunda you see there, that's me on the right. And this was just a little title card to the new Caesar's Palace, and this was the first project I got to coordinate with them. And then, however, that little nudge, and the nudge that we all can make in our life, and what we can offer, leads to unexpected things. And I'm not taking credit for this at all, but that success with the exterior led to more development outside the casino and not in it. Now, I'm still working with a casino company, and that put weight on me. But it did allow us to grow towards bigger ideas that were not gambling oriented and things that maybe vibrate with my faith. Okay? So that being said, we all have the power to shine our light. And whether you're in a position of making decisions and have the money, or whether you're the model builder or the person just coming out of college, you have the ability to nudge and let the Holy Spirit talk to you about which way that is. It's a very simple question. If there's a pendulum going this way or that way, this way being the things that can please God and those that don't, can you help push it if it's going in the right direction? Or can you kind of help redirect it to make it something that can be that is pleasing to God? And so, it makes me think of this verse. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace, because that's what we are. We're stewards. I don't have a gift. I've been given it. And it's something I hold and I can use. So my lesson is, use your gifts to make these positive choices. Shine the light, large, particularly, or small. So after being at Landmark for over a decade, I got a call from a headhunter that said, how about a new job? This one has more responsibility. At Landmark, I was now responsible for a lot of the designers and all the different people down there. And the industry had continued to grow. There was more resources. The TAA was on its move. And I was asked if I would go to Charlotte, North Carolina, from my big city life in Los Angeles, which at the time had just had Rodney King riots and Northridge earthquake, and I had just had a little boy that was 2 years old. So God basically was saying, maybe there's a new home for you. And so we said yes. And of course, we thought, let's head out to Charlotte. It's not Mayberry, but back then I didn't know. And this new life that we might have out there. But again, no. The headhunter said, we chose somebody else. Thank you. I was like, really? All that? But 6 months later, we got a call. And this time, instead of a long, protracted interview process, I was asked, Brenda and I were asked, could we be there in 2 weeks? And so we had already gone through the gyrations. We weren't expecting it all. We said yes, and off we went to Paramount Parks. And with our mission to take the Viacom brands and integrate them into this new set of parks that they had purchased, Kings Entertainment Parks, And my job was to help as fast as possible put these brands into the parks in a logical way. So we did that. We had, at the time, great brands. You know, Nickelodeon, this was pre-Nickelodeon doing any theme park work in out-of-home entertainment. So we were sort of their little experimental ground, put those into the parks. MTV, of course, it was quite different at that point. We were able to create some big events. We took some of the television shows, the smaller brands, brought them alive in attractions, in stories that were bigger than life, and creating story coasters and stories that had these bigger than life names and all this fun that we could do. But in the end, we were able to create new stuff, new things that had been that sort of brought some new experiments to the industry. But there was something missing. And you know, the lessons I think I learned during this whole time was, when I was at Landmark, we were a bunch of lone rangers, you know, individuals walking the pathways of the forest, looking for our next big project, you know, trying to be the best creative directors individually. But here, because of the time and the speed, we needed to have a team. And so we started to build what they didn't have, which was their internal version of Walt Disney Imagineering, right? Our own version, Carnival Parks and Entertainment. But what I learned the most was that I needed help. And I got that help through putting together a team that was super people that helped encourage me and help us through that hard time when we didn't have the ability to get it all done in-house and to connect to the industry that was now just enough there to help us with new kinds of architecture, media, all the things we needed. And those encouragers helped take our gifts and magnify them. And you know, a few of those people are here today. I don't see Bob Shreve and Meryl and Kat and several others I've worked with. You know, you were all part of my world to be able to help when the going was tough to get the work done. And what I learned as a leader was really something very simple that later on had a name that I didn't know called servant leadership. But my two things that I would try to focus on with our team was, you know, it wasn't the big management book with all the things that you ought to be doing. It was just, what are the logs on the road that I could take away from you? And what is the wind in your back that I can put in your sails? And as a leader, if you can do that, that's the only two things you need to really worry about, because it puts the focus on who you're serving. What is it that bothers them all day long? What are the things that are in their way that can make their job easier? You're at the bottom of the pyramid, not at the top. And then what are those intangibles? What are those things, particularly for creatives, that motivate you and then can bring out that extra desire and inspiration to, you know, the result being working later, doing better work, thinking in the shower, all those things that happen by doing that. So as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And that's not only you and your own company, but you and your own industry here, all of us together. You know, the lesson is to care for and nurture that circle of encouragers and companies to help you touch the hearts of your guests, your customers, or clients. We must connect. We must lock arms. We must encourage each other so that we're not operating against each other, but we're operating in alignment to be able to do some cool things. So the parks eventually, after 8-9 years, Viacom merged with CBS. Interest in the parks waned, and they sold the parks. And I was fired. Never been fired before. That wasn't very fun. And went back to my little office in Charlotte and started to make calls again. And my first call was to Nelson Schwab, who had owned King's Entertainment Parks that was sold to Carnival Parks. And he said, you know, I'm on the board of this other theme park group, Herschend Family Entertainment. We have a new CEO, and we want to build a new sort of hub in Atlanta, just south of where I was in Charlotte. And we want to sort of create a property support center for all of them. And would you join? And Joel called, and I thought, sure, tell me more. And I learned the vision was bringing families closer together by creating memories worth repeating, and everything in the manner consistent with Christian values and ethics. I'm like, wow, I think I hit the jackpot. And it was a lot of work, and there was a lot to do, and we, not me, but the team, did the things necessary to take the company to the next level, to bottle up the culture. Joel wrote his book, Love Works, and talked about servant leadership and those programs that jumped out of that, where everything from how we were evaluated, that list of words was my job evaluation. Seriously, literally. We go through those words and talk about how you are. And trust me, it's not easy to talk about have I been unselfish and all those kinds of things. So what it did, though, was create a platform that was so great to be able to launch projects and self-correct. So I want to talk to you about one particular project we were excited about because we had the opportunity to build a great roller coaster, okay? And at the time, we were just making it up, right? What is it going to be? What's its theme? And we went to the board with a presentation called The Outlaw. And we thought, okay, this will be cool because it'll be about the stagecoach, and stagecoaches go fast, and the outlaw comes. And we wanted to kind of get the sheriff involved and all this kind of stuff. And we thought, pretty neat idea to kind of be a mean coaster. And, in their kindest way, after the board meeting, on the side, I think it was Pete, I think it was your dad, Chris, who came up to us and said, I'm not sure about the name. And here's why. Here, we celebrate the positive. We celebrate the people who are doing good. And it was like, so obvious. Here I was, in the company of doing so many good things. And the suggestion led to this idea that what if we just sort of tweaked it a little bit and called it Outlaw Run? And this is the valley that the stagecoach has to get through safely, protected by the sheriff and protected by the people that have the wherewithal to make it happen. So we created our brand, our imagery, and all the things that you do. And we took our time, and we created style guides. And if you can read, I don't know if you can see it very well, but at the bottom, it's like we're very specific about, the holes are okay. That's the way it was back then. No shimmering guns, okay? We're not glorifying shooting. Near miss is good. Brazen violence is not good. Yes to the sheriff, no to the outlaw being cool. Yes to thrills and adrenaline, no blood gore. Glorifying the good guys are the heroes. So that kept on going. We started to create our slogans. The good guys always win. Adventure begins there, long unneeded. And it just grew and grew. We told it to our guests. We told it to our employees. We created signage and integrated it into the attractions. And the marketing team continued, and the culture, that platform allowed it to go beyond us as the creators of the attractions to those that were continuing to communicate and tell the stories. And with the park, they had the idea, what if we created an icon that was a symbol and a salute to the men and women that uphold the laws of our towns? And we said, great, let's build that. Let's put it there. And then when the ride opened, we were able to not only have this super cool ride with a double barrel roll and all the first that it was and the super speed, but it was something that we could have fun with and also open with an honoring of the lawmen and the sheriff. So here's a little commercial.
There was a time when all we knew was keep our laws was to outride them. That time is now. Silver Dollar City presents Outlaw Run, the first roller coaster in the world to twist upside down 3 times. The only one of its kind with a drop this steep and speed to leave the bad guys in the dust. The new Outlaw Run, only in Silver Dollar City. Let's ride.
You go first.
So we also there, but not glorified, of course. And let's do that again. That worked. Everybody got excited. We were just learning the process a little bit and fine-tuning all the different tools. We had a tired area of the park, and we said, firemen. As you know, Silver Dollar City is an 1880s mining town. Every place there is a part of the city. So this is Fireman's Landing, where the firehouse is, and all those things. And this time we were selling a collection of 10 small rides. But as the formula was sort of fine-tuned, we created this beautiful place. And if you look closely, you'll see the same approach. Volunteer fair, sign up today. The brands call out, pledge to protect the citizens. We worked with kids and opened with an honoring of the firemen of the community, just like we had done with the alumni of the community. And they were part of it. And our guests fell in love with us because we were doing these things. Not very expensive, but with a purpose. And that purpose was integrated into these stories and these attractions because of the culture and the people that were behind it. And it continued on because we built our first hotel with Dolly at Dollywood. Her mantra, dreaming more, caring more, that purpose was infused into this hotel. And it's a beautiful place, the first one for the company, but also for Dolly in growing Dollywood as instead of America's vacation destination. But the touches that are put into it is where the magic happens. Here's a set of signs, like rubber-shaped signs as you drive up to the park. And the first one says, there's a place where the butterflies soar, just steps to song and imagination, where the beauty of the Smoky Mountains will warm your spirit to find God's gift, to celebrate the dreamer in you. So through this is respect for our Lord and trying to create those things that are pleasing to Him in the subtle ways that are still able to be done in this environment and with this culture and with the willingness to do things with a purpose. So, Philippians says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, admirable, if anything is excellent and praiseworthy, think about such things. And so, as you work in your companies, whether you have the ability to nudge in a microwave or to lead the one in power, there's the ability to create those cultures that allow this kind of project making to happen. And so that's my lesson, is to build and find those companies that can allow you to do your work with a purpose. And whatever you can to make it happen and try hard. After a period of time, another opportunity presented itself. And it was quite the U-turn for me, personally. SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment had a rough patch. Blackfish had just come out. CNN was repeating it over and over. The world was turning on the company. And it was a place where, at that time, it was very intense PR. And, almost a Harvard textbook case of how do you get out of this one? Okay, and when the opportunity presented itself to go there to help them change the stripes of the company and do what we felt we could do, I joined the team. Joel Manby went over to be their CEO, and we started to do the things that I just shared with you. We tried to identify their gifts and their talents. They were doing good things. They weren't talking about it. They were talking about coming to see their shows and their animals and their performances, but they weren't highlighting, and we would get peaks and smatterings of this, but they weren't bottling up the gifts and stewarding them. In this case, all the goodness they were doing with rescue. And then the story of what the park is and the platform. What does it mean to be SeaWorld now? And we created this program from park to planet to be caretakers of wild animals and their habitats. And of course, that's probably the last thing anybody believed at that time. Could SeaWorld is SeaWorld really doing that? But you have to begin, and you have to be earnest, and you have to tell the story. So we told the story of how one moment of inspiration can change the world. One moment, okay, with one person. And we built that culture, and we worked on all the dimensions on who the rescuers were and how they would work together, and our animal behaviorists, or communicators, or teachers, all sorts of different ones. Just like at Paramount, we built that team again, in this case, Deep Blue Creative, to internally be masters of that new story, that brand, but partner with the outside industry, which we did a lot, to be able to build new attractions, to do projects with a purpose, to explore, inspire, and take action. And we did our best, and we had to make really hard decisions, and no matter which side of what thing we did, one side or the other was always upset. And we plowed through this hardship for a period of time, and the biggest decision, of course, was to not breed the killer whales any further. To change the shows so that performers no longer rode atop a dolphin and other killer whales, and to change the DNA and the voice to something that aligned with inspiring people to care. And so we did that. And then we tried to do the things that prove it. Most parks have difficulty letting people behind back of house. And we just said, you know what, we have to do this. We're going to fling the doors open, we'll make it safe so that nobody gets in trouble back there. But we're going to show them what really goes on, and what the real story is, what the rescuers are doing, and help them understand why that small pool looks like a little concrete, doughboy, but it's got medicine in it, and it's taking care of that turtle, and that's why he has to be quarantined like that before he's let go in the wild. So lots of things like that, camps, and the stories across the park to tell our message, putting purpose behind the attractions. SeaWorld, the Rescue Coaster at San Antonio. Mako, still a roller coaster, a great one. The tallest, fastest I think we had in Orlando. But trying to debunk all the things that Jaws did against sharks in our psyche, and help you understand that there's a plight behind their world. To let you be the explorer, to let you be that person to inspire others. And Infinity Falls, and the same thing as you saw in the Herschend attractions, with the messaging and all those things included in the queue line. And then strategic moves such as renegotiating our deal with Sesame Workshop. They were getting a little worried there for a while about whether the deal should continue. But after hearing the plan, after seeing actions, bringing them in was one of the big moves for us, because we wanted to talk to kids to help them be smarter but kinder, and what that meant. And of course, trying to get the rescue message and brand everywhere we could, including at the airport. So, as I talk to you today, using your gifts, building that team within Inner Circle Encouragers, strengthening your culture, bottling up projects with a purpose. But then there was two last things. And the SeaWorld piece is the message here, the takeaway is to come alongside. And as I mentioned to you, I wanted 1 million. Okay, and we realized we had 20,000 employees at SeaWorld. We thought, okay, that's about that. And we thought, what if it wasn't about coming to see us? It wasn't that we were the central entity in our discussion and how we built the strategies of the company and its culture. It was to flip it around. What if our job was to be a jetpack on the guests? What if our job was to come alongside that 20 million? And now we're talking. Now we got 20 million people that we can deploy to change, in their case, their world. But, if you take that idea further, to all of you in this room, I called John Robinette last night. He's the one that puts together TEA, the top 20 parks and all the attendance. And I said, John, how many do we got? The whole industry. He was like, oh, I don't calculate that, because usually it's the top 20s and things. And he just sort of said, yeah, I think it's probably in the neighborhood of 500 million guests. So if you, the singular person, could have an influence to magnify up to 500 million, of course, you know, I'm a creative guy, right? So I get to do this kind of now. We have 7.8 billion people in our world. And you divide that by 500 million, yes, and I know you should take them out of that number, but let's just go with it. That's 15 people to inspire. And don't tell me you can't talk, our guests can't talk to 15. And I'm looking here at Andrew X, and he's like, okay, but what about season pass holders? I said, okay, let's make it 30. But you get the point of it all. So be careful and watch yourselves closely what you do. Don't forget the things your eyes have seen. And it ends with teach them to your children and the children and their children after them. Magnify. We can do this. Come alongside. Leverage the millions. And my last stop, I don't have a lot to say here because it was very short. SeaWorld was taken over by a financial management group. They brought in their new team, and again, I was like, see you later. And part of the deal was I could not work in the theme park industry for 2 years. It's like, yikes, what do I do? Well, lo and behold, luckily, I was able to kind of hop over to Carnival, and they needed some help creating fun. But what I learned is it's really creating joy. We helped to program their newest ships, Mardi Gras and the Celebration ships that just coming out. And what I learned in that culture in that short period of time, almost a year, is wow, are they aligned? Big, giant company, right? Because Carnival, as you may not know, is 10 cruise lines. The Seabourn and Princess Cruises, all these other cruise lines. And this brand is all about creating fun. And just like a Eskimo, believe it or not, they have at least 20 words for the word snow. Different kinds, crispy kind, fresh falling kind, the hard kind, all those different things, because in their world they needed it. Carnival is the same way. They were talking about fun in every kind of dimension. It's like, you know, you can get overloaded in fun and talking about this stuff. But it was strategic. How are we going to talk to this age group? What's fun for the kids? What's fun for this? What's fun for that? And so it just brought to my mind that, you know, God has a plan for us to fill us all with joy. And the peace that you will get if you trust in Him can overflow with the power of the Holy Spirit. So when you ask, well, how do I help that pendulum? How do I know what to do? How do I build my culture? How do, you know? In your situation, with your client and with your difficulty that you may encounter, the Holy Spirit will tell you. You'll be led. You'll have that sense of left or right. And that's all you have to do is let God do the steering. But also create that joy for those millions of people. And you'll be able to enjoy the joy as well as you create the things that are pleasing to the Lord. So the challenge I have for you is, you know, we're all doing one of these things up here. And each of these has a protocol and a set of specifications and things you do as deliverables and your proposals that you send out or you're executing. And I just wonder if there's a challenge to all of you to say, hey, what if every project had a purpose? If you could kind of look at it like this, say the story's over. You know, the last several decades, from no industry in theater entertainment to now, we were trying to figure out how to explain to everybody that storytelling was the thread that made it happen. Okay, we got there. We're good at that. What's the next one? The next crayon could be that, like you saw at some of the Herschend parks, and what we tried to do at SeaWorld, is that every project could have a purpose so that the millions could be inspired to do all of these things. And like Major Matt Mason, I learned, you know, you can't go out to outer space by yourself. You gotta have that set of encouragers. You gotta have that culture and that platform to be able to explore those millions and what can happen. And in the end, I got a letter back from Mattel on their official corporate letterhead. And I was so excited about that. I was like, wow. My dad was excited too. He couldn't believe they actually answered. And they basically said, no